Good afternoon. This is Odessa Media Center, Ukraine. We are starting the first briefing for today. Our first guests are Odessa journalists that stand against changes to legislation on freedom of speech, information, and mass media during the war. I would like to introduce our participants. Leonid Shtekel, chief editor of Odessa Daily, Yuriy Rabotin, head of the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine in Odessa region, and Valery Bolgin, the chief editor of Izbirkom. The floor is yours. Good afternoon. We were planning to have the fourth journalist with us, Olga Sira, the deputy chief editor of Chornomorski Novyny. But unfortunately, this is the third day of power cuts in Odessa. No one knows when we can expect the power supply restored. No newspapers are published, and people just furious about the fact that no one cares about newspapers during blackout in Odessa. Olga Sira said hello to everyone, and she asks those responsible for restored power supply to think about newspapers. Now just a few words about our message. It is known that the Verkhovna Rada has lately started certain activities in media, and in late August, Verkhovna Rada adopted in the first reading draft law on mass media, and the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine made a statement on the 31st of August with regard to this draft law. Lately, we've learned that Verkhovna Rada is planning to quickly amend the law on information. That's why Odessa journalists would like to put moratorium during the war on the changes to the legislation related to media activities. And we understand that the war is a period of certain limitations of the rights of journalists. But it is not acceptable to make amendments to the journalists' activities during the war. That's why we now require a moratorium. And after the war, we will be able to properly discuss the needed amendments to the mentioned laws. We should discuss this at the professional level and not what we have been observing for the last several months. And that's why we require to introduce moratorium. I would like to remind that on the 11th of November, there was the Deputy Minister of Information Policy, Mr. Shevchenko, if I'm not mistaken, who was the guest to the Media Center Ukraine in Kiev. They addressed the European Union and received certain comments to the draft law, and they promised to make amendments to the draft law before the second reading. This is just to explain the situation a bit. Now I would like to give floor to our next speaker for today. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us today. And I would like to say that I fully support the decision of the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine in Odessa region. And today I have this statement with the signatures of journalists. And I would like to show the law of Ukraine of 16th November 1991 about the printed media and mass media in Ukraine. And I fully agree that it is very difficult to make legislative amendments and new decisions under the martial law. Leonid has already mentioned that there is a blackout in Odessa, and the newspapers have to find other premises in other cities or even oblasts to being published. This is just briefly. Thank you, dear colleagues. I would also like to express support to the statement of the journalists with regard to the moratorium on the mentioned law. And we stand against making any changes to the right of speech at the legislative level under the martial law. And I would also like to discuss briefly possible changes that Verkhovna Rada has been planning that will be lobbied by the representatives of the party in power. First, we should speak about their attempt to make amendments to the law on media, and we are lucky that this topic is now discussed at the public level. But unfortunately, not all remarks have been taken into consideration with regard to the planned amendments. Secondly, we should follow the EU standards in terms of the disclosure of the information. I've already seen some amendments to the draft law, but they are even more strict than the EU standards that Ukraine has undertaken to implement within the EU-Ukraine candidate agreement. That's why we speak about possible actual ban on the whole range of journalist activities. Because, for example, we won't be able to publish a whole range of photos, videos, etc., that recorded in the public place without consent of all those who are depicted in these pictures or videos. And here we speak about the interference with the freedom of speech, as it is envisaged by the European standards. As for our work in Odessa and in the Odessa Oblast, I would like to address once more, using this platform, the representatives of Odessa military administrations and the thus common to have the open meeting with the representatives of mass media, with the representatives of press services to discuss the issues we have in our work, because actually Odessa professionals, journalists, have already limited themselves to the significant extent. And for example, there is the high level of censorship introduced by journalists in their media. But if you fail to inform the residents of our region, to inform Ukrainians in general about important events, because we are prohibited from this, then other sources will publish this, but those sources, the sources we would not like to hear from. And this will make it difficult to win in the information war that we actually have now. We have questions from the floor. Please don't forget to introduce yourself.
Мікрофон ніби не працює. Можете підійти? Або перевірте ще раз, будь ласка.
Thank you very much for being here today, for supporting our community, because without it is impossible to do anything without the information support. As for the recent developments in the region and recent power cuts, what are the possibilities to raise awareness about this case, and what can we do as journalists who face such issues? So the question is to everyone. I can speak like from myself because I was involved in the electric supply issues, and I would like to say that we are facing the huge problem now. We don't have independent experts who can monitor the activity of the Ukrainian energy network company, NEC. I can make one example, which is not related to the power supply, actually. When people started using the personal heating systems at their apartment, the company has changed their approach. So the big power plants with the bigger capacity have smaller tariffs, and the private households using their private heating systems got bigger tariffs. So we have a lot of specifics here, which can be assessed only by the professionals. We have only the opinion of the monopoly company. And I would like to add that actually a lot of colleagues from the region have reached out to me, and we do everything possible to support them. But the situation is like this all over Ukraine, and we can just support them with our solidarity. We have the military limitations, and we would like this war to be over as soon as possible. I understand the military limitations, but we are still responsible to provide information to our audience. But we cannot always get answers to the specific questions about prospects about when there is no blackout anymore, because some houses in our city have been witnessing the blackout for 3 days already, and we're responsible to inform about the prospects our audience. And we have some cases when the information is provided, and we still need to solve the issue to avoid humanitarian crisis or even rallies. And now we monitor the Russian sources, and those Russian sources have been calling for rallies against the blackout, and this can lead to a huge negative consequences. And but now we're just discussing the different topic. We were supposed to discuss the different issue within our briefing, but I would like you to turn your attention to the building, to the house in Krasnova Street that has been facing the communication issues. And I would like to speak about one more vivid example. Like 2 years ago in October, because of the heavy snow, there were issues with the power supply. But then we found out that the brigade who were supposed to repair those issues, those damages, were not financed enough to ensure the proper repair. That's why Odessa was in blackout for several days back then. So let's come back to the topic of our briefing, the law on media.
Just a second. They're going to put on headphones and check. Українська на першому каналі. Так, якщо переклад працює, yeah, start with your question, please.
Please, could you explain to audience overseas? Oh, sorry, my name is Luis. I'm from Brazilian television, Rede TV, and Pan American television. Please explain to people overseas. Russia, some analysts say that Russia started the war because they didn't want their own citizens to see that democracy works in Ukraine. They were afraid of democracy in their own country. But now, do you think that Ukraine itself is losing its freedom, is losing its democracy, and is becoming like Russia because of martial law?
Я хотів би сказати.
I would like to say that Ukraine will never become Russia. Ukraine will always be Ukraine, and the war demonstrated that we are united and that it is impossible to conquer us. I'm from the Kherson Oblast, and the situation is very difficult there, and my family is there, my relatives are there, and I traveled to Mykolaiv to support volunteers, to support our colleagues, journalists from there. We support journalists coming from the Kherson Oblast. We provide jobs to them, but some of them joined the armed forces of Ukraine. I would like to say that Ukraine will remain Ukraine. It will be always unified as it is. Thank you very much for your question. I can say that there is such danger, and I believe the journalists are well aware of this risk, and they do everything possible for this never to happen. Our statement is also explained by the fact that we want to stop the trends which are, of course, inevitable during the war, but we would like the democracy to be preserved in Ukraine. I hope that there will be no need in yet another Maidan rally in Ukraine. And this is the difference of Ukraine from Russia or any other dictatorship state. Because now we are able to speak openly here, and no one will punish us for this. And thirdly, I'm sure that our demands will be met and democracy will win. Maybe not this month or this year, but then we will have the next democratic elections, and if there will be an attempt of the power for the usurpation, we will just elect other Verkhovna Rada or another president. If these are all questions that you have, we can finalize the briefing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking openly, and thank you for providing information to the international mass media, including those from Brazil. I would like to say that as for the law that we have mentioned today, I would like to turn your attention to the news on the website on the National Union of Journalists of Ukraine that were published on the 31st of August. On there you can get the clear description of this law. Yes, but that was the first reading. And after this press conference, we will send the statement of Odessa journalists signed by those who have already supported this. And secondly, we will find the news piece mentioned by Mr. Shtekel, just to remind you about the assessment that was made. And I would like to present to your media center this book, this material, and I thank you for your work. We will definitely win, and thank you for being here today. And I would like to say that we have kind of the Milky Way that illuminates Ukraine as it is, and Ukraine will be preserved. Thank you very much, and thank you for the gift. We will have the next briefing in 40 minutes at 3 p.m. And we will discuss how Odessa condominium are getting ready to the big war, because you can now see that there are power cuts in Odessa, and there is also the lack of water supply in Odessa, because we need electricity for the engines and pumps to work properly. And the situation is unchanged compared to what we have the day before yesterday. So today I would like to discuss with the representatives of condominium how they deal with the situation. Stay with us, and thank you.